started, so okay. So we are in Megillat Ruth, chapter 2 and pasuk 15. Next week we're going to go back to our regular scheduled programming on Tuesday. So we'll do it in the short gap.
Bezrat Hashem.
Bezrat Hashem. Hopefully it's not going to be an overload. So last time we discussed the fact that that Boaz was extremely nice to Ruth, and he let her. He told her not to go anywhere else and to hang around in his place, in his fields, and he actually invited her to eat with the boys, the harvesters. Instructed them to let her drink from the water, which was assigned or specially brought in for the workers. The paupers had to take care of themselves. Bring your own water if you want to collect matnot aniyim, gifts to the poor here. Thank you. And so the water was a very big component because they didn't have running water in those days. You had to bring it from the well, and they brought it from a very special well in a famous well in Bethlehem, in the center of town. Sweet water. We learn later that David HaMelech really loved that water, and it's what the water that was right next to the Beis Din, where the Sanhedrin was sitting and ruling.
So do we know anything about his motives at this point? Was he just just acting out of sympathy for what had happened to her?
So the motives, the motives of Boaz are several. Okay, chief among them is the fact that he has responsibility for them because he is a relative, and he realized right away that he's a relative. Ruth did not realize who he is. She just knew his name is Boaz, but she didn't know the relationship until when we learned today that she got back home with whatever she collected, and her mother-in-law told her that this is Boaz. That's our. But so he right away, he knew the story obviously because they showed up in the funeral of his wife, right? So he wasn't available to take care of them right away because he was sitting Shiva, and then first of all he was Yontav, then he was sitting Shiva. But after all of that, he has a responsibility. He also, the field, or one of the fields that he was working was a field that was left for him by Naomi's husband, by Elimelech. Okay? Some say that the field that she was collecting happened to be that field, the field that belongs to Naomi altogether. Mm-hmm. The harvest right now belonged totally to Boaz because that was the agreement. I'll take care of or your field, make sure nobody else takes it, but I'll work it. And the harvest was supposed to belong to Boaz, but Boaz felt responsibility. That's number one. Number two, he was the leader of Am Yisrael, and as such felt responsibility for every poor person in the land of Israel. That needed to be taken care of. And there are those who say that he already calculated several steps further and forward and realized that he knew the story of Elimelech dying and his two sons died without children, and there is the whole halacha of yibum, that if a man dies without children, the wife, the relative, or the brothers, or the closest relative to that man has a responsibility to marry the widow and make sure that she bear children, so they're not left with no name, with no kadishul, so to speak. So he already calculated that he and someone else are relatives, and that someone else, which later on is called Ploni Almoni, someone, John Doe in our language. So that's John Doe, and they don't say his name not to embarrass him, because he wanted nothing to do with her, because she was a convert and a Moabite, previously Moabite, and he didn't want to get involved. So Boaz felt that maybe he will need to. So right away, all of those calculations were running through his mind as soon as he heard who she is and what the story is. So we left off where they were sitting with the boys, with the harvesters, with the foreman and all the other boys that were working in the field. And they were eating together, and he gave her food even though he didn't have to. And he gave her enough so she ate, and she was satisfied, and she had leftovers, and so that's where we left off. Now, one of the things that we learned from that, it's sort of a little bit in the previous pasuk and in the pasukim that we will learn today, is the fact that we will see that she had tremendous success collecting, gleaning. That 1-2 stalks at a time. She had tremendous success. We'll make the calculations and we'll see, how much she collected. It was an enormous amount. Part of that blessing that came to her was because of how they acted in that meal. Okay, there is a halacha that when someone eats a meal, they should not clean the bread off the table and the crumbs off the table before Birkat Hamazon, before we say the last bracha. You need to have some, if you want to clean a little bit, that's fine, but you need to leave some bread on the table. The reason being is that when we say the bracha Birkat Hamazon, bracha means that we are bringing the blessings from above, blessings from God. We're bringing it down here to the physical world. When you bring a bracha to the physical world, you need something physical for it to have the vessel to hold on to the blessing. You cannot sit at home and say, well, I wish I would win the lottery without buying a lottery ticket. You have to buy the lottery ticket. So you have to have the bread on the table if you say the Birkat Hamazon. So the bracha, all of the brachot that we mentioned, all of the blessings that are mentioned in Birkat Hamazon, going to actually take effect in your home, in your bread, in your food. So we needed something physical that has to do with food. It's not
anything edible.
The bread, because that's what you saying the bracha on. You have the table. The bracha is not going to get into the table, or it's going to go into what the Birkat Hamazon is initiated by washing, by eating bread, right? So the bread has to be there, and so that's something that really is applicable nowadays. Very, very important, and even
finish the flour.
But
you have to live a bite. You have to live a bite.
More than just crumbs on the tablecloth.
Yes. You have to live a bite. You can bring matzah to the table. You don't have to have, anything lechem.
What you didn't bench on initially to the table? In other words, let's say you had the challah, you finished all your challah, you can go take a piece of matzah from a box and put it back on the table.
That's what we. You typically right, but if you're planning to finish the challah, you can bring matzah up front.
Right. Up front initially.
Yeah,
correct.
No, but even if you have matzah, you have challah, you're going to eat it. So bring a piece of matzah, put it with it. In addition, just
But you're talking
for me.
about a little piece.
You just,
Like a
we
little piece of
just
crust or
very,
something.
yeah,
It
very,
doesn't have
very.
to
It
be
doesn't
a
have
lot.
to, right? It doesn't have to.
Challah.
We're not intending to ruin your Shabbos challah experience.
Not clear that,
Right.
but I wasn't sure what the reason.
No, you have Hamotzi Lechem Mina Aretz, the initial. Then
Birkat
you send
Hamazon.
Hu no Sein Lechem
Hamazon is
L'chol
food.
Basar. Hu no Tein Lechem L'chol Basar. So there's this connection
Right.
between the Motzi and the Birkat
I knew
Hamazon.
you were supposed to leave it and not take it off, but I
Right,
didn't know
but
what
so the
No,
reasoning
you
is,
take off all the
it's
knives
very, right,
before
you're taking the knives off, right. Now, this also, by the way, is applicable when you go to a restaurant. Many times you go to a restaurant and you wash, and then before the dessert, they clear the table, they take everything, they take the bread away. Keep the bread there. A small piece of it, you don't need to keep the whole basket over there.
happens at weddings.
At weddings.
The guys are interested in
Right.
cleaning up, for the next thing. They want to
Exactly.
get out of there. So they come and they take everything off the table, so...
Anyway,
you gotta-
so right away after she finished the meal, and that's one of the things about total. There was leftover. So one way to look at it, he gave her enough, so she has a leftover. We'll see later that she takes it and brings it to her mother-in-law and share, which was very, very nice and unexpected. And another thing we learn from it is that you need to leave the food on the table. It's a piece of bread on the table. Anyway, so Ruth chapter 2, pasuk tetvav, vatakam lelaket, and she right away stood up and went to continue gleaning. Typically after the meal, you feel heavy, you sit, you take a nap, you have a cigarette, you have a beer, whatever is that suits. Beer today is bad, right? Nobody drinks beer anymore. So
That's not what we've been hearing.
Okay.
But she right away, she was very invigorated, she was very energized, and she went right away to continue gleaning. And Boaz, while she was gleaning, Boaz was now remained alone with his boys, and he was giving them a set of instructions, what to do with her. Because it's one thing to tell her, don't go somewhere else and stay here, but it has to match because he's not going to be in the field. He usually was not in the field. So he left instructions to the boys in the field. ויצב בועז את נעריו לאמור, גם בין העומרים תלקט ולא תחלימוה. That she would be allowed to glean in between the bundles that the boys are collecting. The way it was done in those days, before they had those machines that are, going and send the machine to the field and bread come from the other side. They would harvest and they would make bundles and they would collect the bundles, and then they would take the bundles and bring them to a central location where they would beat it and get the grains out of the stalk, off the stalk, and then they would take the grain and they would bring it home. So while in progress, while they're making the bundles, they usually did not let the poor people go in between the bundles to glean, because what would happen, it's an easy picking, and so they did not, and the poor people are not entitled to such a service. They have to go in the field and glean, and soon we'll see what exactly was expected. What do they expect to glean in a certain area? We'll see in a second. We'll talk about that. But the point here is that Boaz, because when you put the bundles, many times one or two fall off the bundles, and those that are falling off the bundles are entitled to be gleaned by the poor people. So typically they would be left there, and after they would take the bundles away, the poor people will come and collect. Now, she was allowed, he gave a direct instruction, direct order to the boys to allow her to glean while the bundles are there. He knew that from the way she was acting and from the way he knew Naomi and how Naomi trained her, and the fact that Naomi came back with her, he knew that and he saw right away that she's something special. She's not the way she was collecting in the field, making sure not to do anything illegal, which was very easy to do, because if you see 3 stalks on the floor, you can, that's illegal. That belongs to the owner, belongs to the field owner. Only 1 or 2 you can collect, and she was not doing that. So he saw that he can trust her, and again, he wanted to be super nice to her. So now this was also a direct order, a direct answer to the foreman. If you recall before, as soon as he came and he saw that woman in the field, he was asking the foreman, the guy in charge, the field manager, who is she? And there are 2 opinions. There is one opinion that he was talking, saying nice things about her, and there is another opinion that he was disparaging her, saying that she was here all day and she's gleaning a lot and not doing anything wrong, but talking as if she is. Mm-hmm. So that was according to that opinion, that's a direct answer to that guy. You let her glean and collect in between the bundles, and don't stop her. Now, so we say here in the pasuk, "Vayetzav Boaz et ne'arav lemor." He ordered them, saying, it's like double language. We're saying it twice. Vayetzav Boaz et ne'arav. It's enough. Why it's lemor? Because he had to tell them very, very strongly, because it was very easy to act towards a pauper in a dismissive way, in a not disrespectful way, because they were basically there not helping exactly, and so he had to be very, very strong, and telling the foreman and the other boys that she can do that. וגם שולו לה מן הצוותים ועזבתם ולקטה ולא תגערו בה. And he also told them, and this is really taking it to the next level, you should forget or make yourself look like you're forgetting bundles and a lot more than just a little onesies or twosies. You should let it drop and make believe that you are forgetting it, so she can collect a lot easier. Now, this is a whole problem here. Why is it a problem? It's a problem because there is a law that the matnot aniyim, whatever the ani is collecting, everything that the person earns, they need to give meiser from, right? That we need to give tithe from. Trumot, masot, from money, from anything that we get. There is an exemption for stuff that was collected as matnot aniyim. If the poor person is collecting, he doesn't need to give truma from it. He doesn't need to give to the Kohen and to the Levi. He is on the receiving end. It's a 501 C3. Each one, they don't have to. It's not being taxed. Each poor person, whatever they collect, they keep. So that is applicable for whatever is legitimate matnot aniyim. If it's a legitimate gleaning, legitimate shichecha, legitimate pe'ah, that is exempt from trumot and maasrot. But if someone makes believe they forget something, but it's not really, so it's not really shichecha, it's not really something that they forgot, it's like a gift. From a gift, you do have to give maaser. If somebody gives you, if somebody gives a bar mitzvah present, $100, the kid should give maaser from it. They should give $10 to tzedakah from it.
But not if she doesn't know.
It doesn't matter if she knows or not. Is what is the status of the stuff? They basically are setting her up for an avera, for eating something that is tithe and the trumot and maasrot were not taken from it, right? They're setting her up to do something wrong. She doesn't know. It's not b'mezid, it's b'shogeg. But if they put something there, and she is picking it up and thinking, okay, that's matnot aniyim, I don't need to, it's not taxed with trumot and maasrot. It's not true, because it's not really trumot and maasrot. It's not something that they really forgot. So this is why the language here is very precise. The language here, it says, shol tasholula, that you should forget and leave, not forget, that you should leave behind you from the bundles, va'azavtem, and afterwards there is another step, and the step is to make it hefker, to make it ownerless. Va'azavtem, you have to leave it, you have to leave it and make it hefker, make it ownerless, and that supposedly will take care of it. Now we have another problem, and the problem is there are several problems here. Okay, one of the main problems here is that you cannot do a messenger to do hefker. Okay, let me give you an example. What do we do on Pesach? On Erev Pesach. Erev Pesach, we are selling the chametz to the rabbi, right? Right? We are not taking chametz that we know where it is and saying, oh, this is ownerless, this is afkir, because it's still in our house, it's still, we have to, but we don't why can't we just make the rabbi a messenger to take care of it? We're actually selling it to him. He becomes the owner. He becomes the owner, and he does something, and he sells it to someone who's not obligated to keep Pesach, right? Why can't we make him a shliach to just make it ownerless for us, because to make something ownerless, you need 3 people. You need a beis din. You need to say in front of beis din, this does not belong to me, and anybody can take it, and so there is a procedure, there is a language, a special language that needs to happen. So there is a problem here with what happened, because he made them messengers to do something that he can't really make the messengers to do. You cannot make someone messenger to get your property to become ownerless, to get your ownership off the property. Okay, you need to do it yourself. Okay, so some.
But they're his employees, so they're doing it.
So
he doesn't do that.
But so the point is that some say that he actually took, to begin with, owner. He ahead of time said that this is ownerless, everything that she would leave ownerless. So he did it. He didn't make them do it, but they needed to make sure that they don't reverse his action, that they don't make him again an owner of it, because they are by default his messengers to harvest the field and to take everything and bring it home. So everything that they touch belongs to him. So if he makes those unknown future bundles ownerless, and then they pick it up, now it's back belonging to him. So they needed to know this whole calculation and make sure that they don't ruin that ownerless ship status. It's also interesting that since we finished with Tishrei, with all the high holidays, and the next big holiday is Pesach. Like my grandmother used to say that you start smelling the matzahs just about now. So, and we did speak about.
Don't even say
They
We
do
are-
start baking them now, right?
Yeah, they start baking you because you need just there's that much.
But you don't have to worry about them going stale.
Right. So there is one thing that we do when we are doing bi'ur chametz and bitul chametz, right? We saying leheve hefker ke'afra de'ara. We are canceling it. What do you mean canceling it? We are rendering it worthless to us, and we are making it ownerless, hefker, and we are stating that this is worthless and ownerless, just like the dust on the ground. So this whole idea of hefker is something that very, very basic and very important and very complicated, because you have a lot of different opinions on how something can become ownerless. The two main ideas is how does something become ownerless? I am taking my ownership away and just leaving it be, and nobody else needs to do anything in order for it to be ownerless. That's one opinion. Or another opinion is that I am basically letting anybody who picks it up, let it be his. So there is no in-between state of ownerless. There is just, I'm ready to give it away to anybody who picks it up. So the fact that it's ownerless by me depends on the fact on someone picking it up and making it their own. So this is another thing that he mentioned here, that you have to, if you're making it ownerless, if you're making it hefker, make sure that she can collect it. So there is this transfer of ownership from me to her, through it being hefker, meaning it can be, you don't give it to her specifically by hand and say, here, this is yours, this is a gift. You just let her collect it and feel that she collected something that belongs to her. Anyway, this is just an aside. So,
But you can't always do that with your property. Meaning, like, if you have an apartment building that's not being very, no positive net income from it.
right,
You can't just say, that's not mine,
right,
because
right.
there's
Especially
no
with real,
taxes.
especially with real estate. Especially with real estate, somebody needs to. So you
You can't just give it up.
Exactly. So that's why you can give it up. There is a procedure in Jewish law that you can give it up, but it has to be in front of 3 people, and you have to have you have the specific language, and you cannot keep the gates and the locks and say that doesn't belong to me, but nobody has the key and nobody can go in. There are rules, for this law. Hefker it's an interesting thing, because in the world typically you don't have in civil law hefker. There's no such a thing. It belongs to someone.
How about abandoning something?
Okay,
But you're not allowed to abandon
so
things. You don't want to, I don't know, make the car payments on a car anymore, so you just leave it in a field somewhere. I don't
It's-
know.
Well, that you still owe money, but if it's your car and you leave it somewhere,
So we
left
had a
it, and
situation
somebody
where
can go
we had a car here in the back of the shul, and it was left for several months, and the police called and
Because they
said,
don't wanna have a car just
well,
hanging around.
okay, so you can. The law of the town is that you can do that, and the laws of most towns in America is that you
Even though
cannot.
it's on your property.
Yes, you can do it. It's an abandoned. It looks
it looks bad.
looks bad. Yeah. People from the people who lived behind the shul called the police and said, it's sitting here. We don't, that's not right. Full of leaves and snow and whatever. Anyway, what?
What happened to it?
We called Cars for Kids or whatever, and they took it away. Anyway, another thing that is being taught from this pasuk that Boaz was very, very careful with how to deal with the poor. The rule is that if there is a rich person, a poor person that used to be rich, they used to have a lot of money, and luck turned around, and they don't have anything now. They have to be dealt with with very, like walking on eggshells, very, very sensitive. You have to be very, very careful not to embarrass them, because they used to be the givers. They used to be the ones, they used to have it, and now they have to come and beg and ask. So there are a lot of discussions in the halakha how to deal with it and what to give them, how to give it to them, how to allow them to pick it up and feel that it wasn't given to them, that they just picked it up, that they just found it, that they just, they even if they sort of see that it was left on their doorstep, but they don't know by whom, and they don't look at the person in the eyes, and it's very, very, very sensitive, and there is a whole slew of stories in the Gemara and midrashim of the rabbis how they would go the long way to make people comfortable. I think a couple of stories are in the bottom of the pirush that you have, that someone would walk in front of a poor person that he knew was very poor, and he would drop a coin right in front of him as he was walking, and the guy would walk and say, "Oh, I found the coin. Ta-da, it's mine." But it was a setup, So we saying in Birkat Hamazon in the very beginning, "Bechen, bechesed uberachamim," that God should give us the bread with grace, with kindness, and with mercy. What is grace? This is grace. Grace is that you don't feel like like someone is doing you a favor. You don't feel embarrassed to earn it or to get it. So that's what we're asking God, to give us the food in such a way that we will feel we won't feel embarrassment. So that's what Boaz did over there. Anyway, ותלקט בשדה ולקטה ולא תיגעו בה, and you should not rebuke her, and you should not bother her. And he said it twice. Before it says ולא תחלימוה, don't embarrass her, and then it says לא תיגעו בה. Don't. What's the translation here? Don't rebuke her. Okay. So why twice? So one of the commentaries is very, very interesting. He says when a boss is telling their workers to do stuff, they never do everything. They do only part. They never expect that. You can't expect your workers to follow your orders fully. They'll do 80%, they'll do 70%, but you cannot expect everything. So he told them more, so at least the minimum that he intended to happen will actually happen. So he told them
very different things, embarrass and rebuke.
Okay, so
redundant.
That's how it's being presented. That at the very least, if you let her pick up in between the bundles, maybe they're not going to forget stuff. If they're not going to embarrass her, maybe the rebuke maybe will happen, but without embarrassment, whatever. He tells them to do more, so at least the basics will occur. ותלקט בשדה עד הערב. So she was again very eager, very energetic and motivated, and she collected and she gleaned until the evening. ותחבוט את אשר ליקטה ויהי כיפה שעורים. And she beat it up to separate the grain from the stalk. So she has to carry to the city only the grains. I mean, in those days, obviously nowadays as well, the field is not in the middle of the city, so there was a long way back home to go. And if she needs to, most poor people would walk around. They would have enough strength to carry it, with the stalks. So the point was speed. let me finish in this field and go to another field and go to another field and go to another field. Let me go to as many fields as possible, and then I'll bring it home, and then I'll deal with beating it up. She didn't want. She was alone. She was a woman. She was obviously she felt she's weaker, so she beat it up right there and then in the field before carrying it home, and she ended up bringing home a fa seorim. How much is a fa? A fa is 12 of those.
Oh, is that what that was doing here?
Yes. This is a 2-liter Coke bottle, right? And a fa is 25 liters. So it's 12 and a half of these. That is a lot of grain. That is tremendous amount of grain. This is like insane amount to collect in one day by one person. The bracha was working overtime, and let's just discuss a little bit the quantities here. When the Jews got the manna, right? When we received the manna from heaven, each one of us collected an omer. What is an omer? Is asirit ephah. Is 1/10 of an ephah. She collected an ephah, 1/10 of an ephah. An omer is 2.5 liter. That's a little less than 2 liters. Just a couple of grams less. 2.5 liters. So it's a Coke bottle and a little bit, okay, and a quart. And that was the amount of food that will feed one person for one day. Right? We got a manna. We got enough for us to eat each day, exactly what we need for the day. And there are, depending on the level of piety of the person, the pious people will collect it very quickly in the morning. It will be right in front of their doorstep, in front of their tent, and right away they will have the Coke bottle filled up and finished. And the guys that are less pious, they have to go all around and go outside of town, to the outside of the camp, or right to the edges of the camp, and collect over there, and they collected all day, huffing and puffing, and just arriving with a Coke bottle. But the end result was they all came home with an omer, with 2.5 liters worth of grain, of the manna. Now, that means that she collected a fa. She collected 10 times. She collected food for 10 days. So she collected for her and for her mother-in-law for 5 days worth, which is a lot to do in your first day of work. That you get the employee of the month, after 2 hours that way. And so now, what more interesting is, there is a law that what if I have a field, and I collected bundles, and there is, the gleaning was left, but then there was a storm, and the wind came, and messed up all my bundles, and spread it all around the gleaning. What do I do? There is gleaning on the bottom over there. What do I do? So the law is that the owner can collect everything. They take the rake and they collect everything, and including whatever was supposed to be gleaning, and then he leaves on the side an estimated amount of what rabbis estimate should be the gleaning. What is the estimation? Hear that. For a field of close to 4 acres, which is called Beit Kur. Okay, it's a field that can produce 250 liters of grain. That's 125 bottles like that, right? 250. It's a big. So 4 acres of a wheat field. The gleaning for it is estimated to be 5 liters, 5.5 liters. 2-3 bottles of Coke. That's it. For 4 acres. And she collected 12. she collected a fa. She collected an enormous amount. I don't know how big the field was. It doesn't say, but 4 acres. That's not something you can cover in one day. And she, so she collected so much gleaning. There was such blessing in her work. That was because that was before the instructions. The instructions came in the middle of the day, and when Boaz showed up to the field earlier, before lunchtime, right? He saw already that she had a bunch of omarim collected, on the side, and said, "Who's this? Who collected all of that? Who does that belong to?" So it was really tremendous amount, and then she took that vatisa vatavo ha'ir. So she carried it. So imagine carrying 12 Coke bottles from the field. The Coke bottles are very important. They have to come with the Megillat Ruth as show and tell. What?
Without beating.
Without beating,
she would never be.
She would need a car. She would need a truck without beating. So she beat
any person.
Exactly.
Any person
exactly. Now, what is the estimation that the rabbis say? How much a person can carry on their own? If somebody helps you load up, you can load 3 times. You can carry 3 times more than if you need to load it up yourself. Okay, that's the ratio. So a person can carry on their own 5 se'im. 5 se'im is a 3 se'im. So 5 se'im is a 1 2/3 of a foot, right? And she carried a whole ephah on her own, which was way more than what a human being is estimated can load on themselves without help. And she didn't need any help. And they're saying she carried it at one time. And she carried it in one time.
It went once.
Not exactly, one trip, and also very, very important. All of the shenanigans that Boaz was instructing everybody, live here and let her collect there and make believe you're forgetting, she wasn't taking any of that. She was not going in between the bundles that belongs to him. She would not pick up the bait of picking up all of those so-called forgotten bundles. She just gleaned. She knew this is for sure. If I find 1 or 2, there's no bait over here. That's really rightfully mine, and that's all. And with all of that, she was able to collect an enormous amount, which is almost impossible to imagine for a woman to that's not. She was. Remember before we said that he acted very nice to her. He acted very nice to her more than you would act to a regular pauper, because she was a princess. She was the daughter of the prince of Moab. So she was in the palace. She was living the good life, and so she didn't have exactly the training to go and collect so much stuff from the field. And nonetheless, she was very motivated because she was worried about her mother-in-law, who is old and not able to take care of herself already. And, she felt responsible. So she took all of that, and vatisa vatavo ha'ir, so she carried it in one shot and brought it to the city. Vaterecha motana. When she came, she wasn't flaunting and she wasn't saying, "See, hey, how you doing? You see what I got? So much." No, she was very, very, understated, and her mother-in-law happened to see it. She walked in the house with it, so she saw it, and so she saw it asher liketa vatotze vatiten la et asher hotira misova, and she not only carried those this ephah, this 12 bottles of 25 liters of grain, she also carried the leftover from the meal. Now, she had lunch with Boaz, then she continued to collect till the evening. It was summer, so the evening was late, so it was several hours till sundown, around sunset, and she continued to collect, and she came home, and she walked and carried all of that. She came home exhausted and hungry, and she wouldn't just eat it, what's left over right away. The grain is useless in the evening when you want a quick meal, right? You can't put it in they didn't have microwaves. So, you can't do much with it. Nonetheless, she didn't take it for herself. She right away shared it and gave her mother-in-law to eat. And let's just finish the last pasuk because it's sort of time. ותאמר לה חמותה, so חמותה started asking her, where were you today? איפה לקעת היום? ואנה עשית? And what did you do? It's as if she was doing something else. She was working in some other side job, based on the amount that she earned. It's not a gleaning produce. It's like she did some lawyering job, worked for a few hours and got paid $900 an hour and bought all of that. So what ma'asit? And then she realized that she worked. She was tired. Yima kirechech baruch. Whoever recognized you, whoever you worked with, God bless him. So she told him, so she told him who was the person she was with. I was today with a gentleman by the name of Boaz, and that's when she told her, and we'll learn about it next time, she told her who Boaz was, and what he is to them, and how they related. But just last word here, that the person that I did for, not that did for me, that I did for him. That's how she presented it. Because the rule is, the law is that the poor person is the one that's doing a favor to the rich man. Because the rich man is responsible to give maisa. And without a poor person, they won't have anybody to give to. So the poor person is really doing the favor to the rich man, because by giving maisa, that's what gives the blessing to the rest of what we earned.
So even if she was collecting just a reasonable amount, she doesn't have a wheelbarrow or anything.
She carried it all
in her apron
on her back.
But no,
in a burlap sack or
in a burlap sack, in Coke bottles, right?
How
Everybody's
often?
gonna send you out to the field.
How often do the